Hey folks, Chris McLean back again. Another episode here in the studio, and joining me today is Tristan from Tristan Jud Media, and they're an agency that can turn any ambitious company into an epic brand. They specialize in organic reach, paid media, digital IQ, which I love that name. We're going to get into what that actually is, and also the creative side. In simple terms, they'll get your voice, brand, product out there in front of the right audience and grow your business in the right direction. Tristan, we were talking up front. You've got a very similar vintage to myself. I think we launched our agencies similar time, 2002. We're a couple of decades into this thing now, and we're chatting about some of the differences and how much things have changed from hand coding websites in Macromedia, Dreamweaver before it was even Adobe. Flash timeline animations and all that good stuff, pre-digital, pre-Facebook. Let me say it almost pre-MySpace times, pre-social media. So very interesting how much the industry's changed over that time.
Good old days.
Get into all of that. But thanks so much for dropping by, mate.
Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. So give us the holistic overview of yourself and Tristan Jud Media. When did you begin? How did it come about? What was this sort of evolution and ups and downs and journeys of that process to where you are today, 2022, still going 20 years later?
All right. So the story isn't as great as everyone talks it or makes out to be. So I was in probably year 10 or something like that at school. This is how far we're going back. And, the question comes up, what do you want to do? Because you've got to start picking your subjects. And at that stage, like most people, didn't have a clue. So ended up going down the kind of web design, graphic design kind of route. And from there, it just kind of fell into it and enjoyed it so much. Went and studied and learned all about, the good old days of building a website in, as you said, Dreamweaver. And I think, what was the app? What was the graphics app? Fireworks.
Fireworks.
Macromedia Fireworks.
Well, the Macromedia.
That was a cracker. So we did that, and just basically rolled in from there, and then just started. This was at the early stages of the web kind of motion, or everyone getting on the web. People knew they kind of needed a website. They didn't really know why. I know here in Australia we were still pushing hard with Yellow Pages, that massive telephone book. We did a lot of kind of building, I suppose, basic websites just so they could have a web address in the Yellow Pages ad.
I remember registering. I remember the tricks you do to get your listing up in the Yellow Pages. Our agency was Tech Knowledge, so T was way too far down. So I think
I had
like AA space underscore Technology.
My agency was called AbleNet Design. Horrible freaking name, but it put me at the top. And I was like, that'll work. It was terrible though. So that's kind of where it started, and then from there we just started building that. Of course, eventually Facebook came into play. MySpace, it never really took off in kind of any kind of business way. I think it was too new. People didn't really understand how they could have used it. But Facebook was the change in that. People suddenly were, back in those days, you didn't have pages or fan pages. You had an account. And there's still people today you come across that still have their like business account, which is a profile. And then they wonder why they can't do all the other things that they're meant to do. And that is a disaster.
Legacy. You got that legacy of the original setup.
And that's kind of how it all started. And then I suppose, 6-7 years ago, I took a bit of a break from the marketing side of things and got into photography a fair bit. And ended up shooting lots of kind of fashion campaigns and ad campaigns in Australia and all over the world, which was great. It was great fun. But I noticed there was always a convergence of me shooting stuff and then at the same time still kind of moving back into that marketing, advertising kind of flow where people were asking questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? I saw a lot of bad advice being thrown around to friends and things, which was upsetting to see them throw a lot of money down the drain for no real reason. Like it didn't really get them where they needed to go.
Yeah.
And then we just, I decided to take on new clients because during my photography era, we still had a few clients that just didn't want to leave, and we managed them and just kept them running. So I was always in it. I just wasn't actively looking for new clients and marketing myself as that. And that brings us today where I'm sitting here talking to you.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's one of those industries, isn't it, where you sort of get to a point like, screw it, I'm getting out of this thing, and then it sort of brings you. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
They do.
Seems to suck you back in. I'm very much the same. So we started around the same time, 2002. Built an agency, left the agency, started coaching, and then joined another agency sort of 18 months, 2 years ago. So back in a very new world. So that's that evolution of the industry over that 20 years. I mean, for me, I remember very, very much, as you're saying, very early on, pre-Facebook, pre-social, definitely pre any kind of B2B targeting through social media. Social media was purely for you and your friends. It wasn't a B2B platform at all for quite a long time. But I mean, it was everything else, traditional, big, sort of incumbent advertising agencies, your McCanns, your Saatchis, your Clemengers, that was advertising. And then you had boutiques that did a bit of web design, a bit of graphics, some flash animation, video studios, and it was very much digital as an afterthought. It was everything. It was TV, radio, print, yellow pages, right? And then a little bit, as you said, you'd have a website just so you could stick it on your listing. Whereas today it's inverted completely, and now it's digital first and everything else kind of as a second, if you've got enough money to buy TV ads and radio spots, right? So it's a very, very different world out there. And is that something that you sort of noticed, having a little bit of a hiatus, going into something else and coming back into the industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, my hiatus, I suppose, was still highly connected. So I did see the changes, but because I wasn't, I suppose, working in it as closely, I did notice there was a huge shift, and it was the way it was meant to go. So there was definitely that huge shift. It was an interesting shift. And then we saw another shift 2 years ago, and I know we don't want to talk about it, but, when we moved into the whole COVID situation, that was a big push for the remaining stragglers that were like, we're not doing e-commerce, we're not getting into that. And they were thrust forward probably 5, 6, 7 years in their timeline, because they were just, we're not doing it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
it was a massive wake-up call.
It was an interesting time to watch a lot of people suddenly scramble.
Good time for agencies. Good time for well-positioned agencies, people in hospitality, and people that were in hospitality,
especially
retail niches.
The restaurant industry, the restaurant cafe industry. They were just turned on their head in a day. Like it was just crazy. But it was good to see so many of them kind of just run with it. There wasn't really anyone complaining. They were just like, we're just going to do whatever we can. And I think, I know a lot of them have come out probably stronger for it and found new ways and new audiences just because of that. And the other good thing about all of that, of course, was the huge push to small business. Like suddenly everyone was trying to support the local small business or the local business, not just the massive internationals. Everything from fashion to, consumer electronics or whatever it may be. They were all suddenly looking what they could buy locally. And locally even went Australia-wide, but it was like, what could we build or what could we buy here and support our neighbours as such, which was fantastic to see.
Yeah, it was a huge turning point. Like I said, the laggards, people who were sort of on the fence about, particularly e-commerce, and they said that it's amazing how much, no pressure, no diamonds, I guess is a sort of a saying there. But without that pressure, it's like you had to do it. It suddenly wasn't an option anymore. It was literally make or break. If you didn't find some way to still get customers in even changing business models, right? A lot of cafes suddenly had to add ordering, they had to set delivery models. You had to change business models overnight to stay relevant and just to continue to make money. So it was a massive upheaval, but often that's what it takes to get people to sort of change what they're doing and doing it in a different way. And there definitely was a mass adoption of e-commerce and online. And like I said, coming out the back end, it does feel like there's now this kind of omni-channel dual model where they've maintained a bit of that, and at least that stuff is there now, should they need it again.
Yeah, and it seems as I said, they've come out stronger for it. I think they've a lot of them have found, I suppose, new audiences. They're now selling products, and it's not a huge amount to their bottom line, but even if it's only 5-10%, it all adds up at the end of the year type thing. So exactly. They've found these new things that they probably never would have even tried.
And stuff that's good to have should again the core business. The core business not be feasible or profitable again. Yeah, super interesting time. So during that, riding that wave, were you as an agency, did you sort of see that and move into local businesses? Were you already sort of servicing that audience?
We were already servicing as many as possible, especially in the small business area, because I feel they're always the ones that struggle the most with new technology and new ideas and things, because obviously it costs money, let's be honest. And they're very, I suppose, at the moment, and there still are, they're changing at the moment, but like back then they were all in on Instagram, and Instagram was their only source of almost marketing. The website was separate, everything, it was just Instagram, and that was it. And that was a terrible thing. I actually remember sitting in a couple of meetings with people telling them, this would have been 2.5-3 years ago now probably, that and I was saying, so when Instagram isn't as relevant anymore or not as strong anymore, and people have moved on to this new thing called TikTok, where are you going to go? Like, what are you going? What's your plan type thing? And I remember there were people that actually laughed, saying, "Oh, Instagram's not going away. It's not happening. It's not." And Instagram didn't go away, but if you look at how much it costs to create something on Instagram and try and get it out there compared to, say, TikTok, which has much better organic reach, it makes no sense to kind of shit on the new platform that's working quite well. I don't understand the kind of love for a platform that you don't own and can change things up at any moment. Yet something new comes along and you we're not even going to touch it. It's fascinating to speak to people that have such love for it, and you're just like, well, okay.
I guess people get invested in it. Feels like part of their business, right? It feels like their little friend that runs their business for them.
Yeah, it's such an interesting conversation, and most have never thought about. And I think you know him as well because you spoke at his platform. James Tuckman.
Yep.
He talks about it, and he talks about having an off ramp. And I love the way that he talks about that, because it's just a great way of putting it that everyone understands that, your socials and that sort of things is just a way of getting people in, and then you need to put them somewhere where you have control, which is in most cases an email, because it's the easiest, an email list. It's the easiest way to do that. And just pushing them in that direction. So then you have, access to be able to contact them and properly kind of bring them into the mold as such.
Yeah. We have somewhere that you own that audience, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, you want to own your audience, and same with us as agency owners, right? We want to own our audiences. We want to own our own client list, and not just have everyone in a Facebook group or have everyone in a LinkedIn group, where again, potentially that platform could switch off overnight, or something like we work with quite a lot of Shopify clients, and something like Shopify could switch. It's probably not going to, but it could switch off overnight, or it could glitch out, or it could have an issue, and suddenly all of your customer data is gone, or you're having to pay more to have that data. You're paying someone to keep that list for you, and you don't actually own it. So should you want to go I'm going to move my business over here now. Well, like I said, so the case of the last couple of years where you have to suddenly do something different, and now you don't own that data at all. Now you have no way to talk to your clients. Very, very important to, as James says, build that off ramp and use social media to find people and go, let's get you over here into something that I own, where I can speak to you. Should these platforms disappear, change, become more expensive, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's one of these things. Now, everyone hates on email so much as a communication platform. Yeah. At the same time, in most cases, you've signed up for this email that you're getting, these email newsletters that you're getting. So you can easily just click the unsubscribe button. But the amount of money that email marketing generates, it's something that you need to look at, and you need to understand that, just because you're not happy with the emails that you're getting in, if someone's signed up for this email, they want to hear from you. They want to see your stuff. They're not necessarily going to see it on social, just depending on, how they've interacted with you in the past and things like that. It's just fascinating watching how people get so emotionally connected to one certain thing. They hate something else, even though the data's there to prove that it works very well across all industries. There's not really anywhere that it doesn't work if you use it correctly. So I just love watching it and just think it's fascinating how people get so connected to one thing, and that's it. That's what we're doing.
It's very, very funny. How do you approach that as a conversation with a client? Someone that's maybe resistant to, TikTok's for kids, or email marketing doesn't work anymore. How do you have that conversation? Is it database? Is it logic based?
It's database. It's logic based. I guess the best thing that's happened in recent times, I've been on the whole, off ramp side of things for years, and no one really takes it seriously, and they all complain about, email's horrible, blah, blah, blah. But I suppose in recent times, in the last, say, 4 months or so, I think there was a time where I don't think you didn't know someone who hadn't been hacked on Instagram. For some reason, it just went through, and there was like a 4-week period where just everyone was getting hacked that you knew. And at that moment, suddenly people started to realize, well, how do I contact clients? Because we were getting phone calls from people that we've kind of consulted with over the years saying, oh, we've been hacked. How can we tell everyone? And they're like, oh, what can we do? How can we get it back? And at that point, you're just kind of, well, you can't really do anything. You just have to keep reporting it and trying to get in contact with someone from Facebook or Instagram.
Good luck.
And like fix. And it took, some people still haven't got it back, and they just had to start a new account. And from that moment, they kind of suddenly realized that actually having this off-ramp and having client data stored on something that you own is a much better solution, or a much better option. And with the case of TikTok was just one of these things that, it took a while for the majority to get on it. And at this point now, and even though we were saying, years ago now, it's probably the one you need to focus on, just putting stuff up and, building from there. Now it's almost to the point where everyone just talks about TikTok. Yeah. TikTok and LinkedIn. LinkedIn came back strong, and it does really well. Organic side of LinkedIn is fantastic. The ad product is expensive but good if you use it properly. I think the only problem LinkedIn has at the moment is really the consistent bot messaging you get all the time.
Yeah, when people know that you're there to do business, so you're always going to get hit up with business propositions.
And I understand that, but I feel that they go about it the wrong way.
Yeah,
they just hit straight in with the sale, and you're like, well, I don't really know who you are, what you're doing, or why, but and you just don't reply.
Yeah, I mean that comes down a lot to how these people how they're being trained and educated to do messaging, right? It's the same on cold emails, horrendous, cold Facebook connections. Hey, now we've connected. I go and I like 2 or 3 of your posts randomly, and then every time I log into my Facebook account, I see someone that I don't know that's just like 7 of my posts. I'm like, I wonder who I'm about to get a DM from. Oh, there it is. Hey, we're a VA company. You know, our VAs can get you guaranteed 1,000 leads this week. But all of that's horrendous, right? But that comes down to the person doing it, not the platform itself.
Yeah,
but
it's not the platform. It just happens to be that's their problem at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's a sad thing because the platform is fantastic. It's fantastic to actually have a platform where people are there to do business.
Yeah, it certainly helps to. You can be much more direct, and if I'm connecting with you, you expect that you're a business, I'm a business. There's some kind of business relationship that we're about to embark on. It's sort of embedded in the idea of the platform versus Facebook, where it's kind of a more of a B2C friendly platform, but it has a B2B kind of push. So the context is a little bit different.
And I see that they're putting a bit of a push on B2B these days. They've opened up new targeting options, obviously because they love to copy everyone. So they've seen that it's working for LinkedIn and kind of trying to jump on that bandwagon as well.
Yeah.
So
they're big enough. They see what's working over there, and then they ate up Snapchat features. They eat up TikTok. Reels is copying TikTok, and sort of wait and see what's happening, and then just invest a few mil, build out their own version of it, and then everyone migrates to that because it's there and they're in that platform anyway. So it's not a bad model.
I mean, it's worked really well for them up until now. And for some reason, they just can't seem to knock TikTok off the pedestal.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the zeitgeist at the moment, isn't it? It's the place to be.
It's so interesting to watch because, I mean, the Reels platform has progressed enough that it's almost exactly the same as TikTok. When you look at it, you could almost say, if you didn't know it, the apps enough, you'd say, oh, is that TikTok? And it's just interesting to see how it's gone, how that they're pushing it, and they just can't seem to knock off.
It's also in the algorithms, right? It's how those things reward content. TikTok rewards very certain types of content for a specific reason, right? It's sort of the stupider and more ridiculous the content is. It seems to be bumping that stuff up. So
it comes down
something to the feed and the algorithm and the For You page. There's something about it that rewards certain types of content, and that's probably what keeps it popular, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. And there's probably merit in the fact that it should be a little bit more raw and real than, I suppose, Instagram. I think Instagram, people got to a point where you were just sick and tired of everyone's perfect life.
Yeah.
It's
too sculpted.
And you knew it was fake, but you still looked at it every day and you're just like, that's just not right. Like, why the hell are they at the beach? And they're not at the beach. That photo was taken freaking 4 months ago, and they've just been rolling this stuff out. And
the one time they went to the beach and just took 100 photos of it.
Yeah, exactly. Or like that, they've come across a Lambo parked on the side of the street, and they just have an impromptu photo shoot with someone else's car, and it's just like, oh, okay. But it's just
a funny meme yesterday. There's a girl standing in front of her, a new Porsche, saying, "Oh, a new car," with her holding her car keys, and they zoom into the car keys, and it's a VW set of car keys. So that's a classic example, right? Trying to
I love that. That's so
show
good.
Something that's not real. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was just classic Instagram perfection. Here's my perfect life. But it's really it's selling the wrong thing, right? It's showing that there's definitely something lacking in the real life view. You need to push that as the reality.
And now we've got that Be Real app coming through, which claims to basically be your raw life as such. Where you can't. Well, I mean, you can, but most people aren't kind of setting it up too much. That they're trying to play it as properly as possible, where you've got that time slot to take a photo, and you take it takes a photo of yourself as well, and then you can interact on the app. So I mean, it's definitely the way, I suppose, people want to go. They want to see a real situation happening and a real depiction of your life as much or more than, I suppose, that fake Instagram life.
Yeah, it's interesting how that there's always dichotomy, right? There's always duality in things. When one thing becomes too popular, something completely contrarian comes out just to sort of shift the populace from super clean and crisp to now this is super authentic and real.
So it's always interesting to see how it plays out. I think.
Yeah, I think that's that's where good marketers and good agencies can adapt to that stuff, right? Because really behind all of that stuff, marketing is marketing. And when you have core concepts and key ideas, you can deploy into whatever platform is most popular if you understand marketing, right? If you understand targeting, you understand a bit of human psychology and a bit of human behavior and buying behavior, you can take that and stick it wherever it needs to go.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I mean, the golden rule of marketing or advertising is always you just go where the attention is.
Yeah.
And you make it work. It's just an easy way. But then on the flip side of that, of course, there's also the concept that if someone is doing, or if the majority of companies are doing X, you should do Y, because there's less competition in that area, and it's probably a cheaper space to dominate quicker.
Yeah, and that's where TikTok's winning at the moment, right? Because it is new and there's much more opportunity there. Whereas something like Facebook, I mean, particularly you say like Facebook organic, is very, very hard to be visible unless you're paying. Whereas TikTok, you can pay much less and be very, very visible very quickly. And over time, that's going to change, right? Because that platform will mature, something else will come along that's the new favorite that now has all this visibility. But a lot of it is about getting onto those trends. If you can get on, I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this all the time. The sooner you can get onto that new thing and build a big following, that's really the opportunity in these platforms, is to get on early, build that platform. And if you can combine that, like I said, with an off-ramp, if I can build up a million person following and then off-ramp those into a few 100,000 people in an emailing list, that becomes significant. But that's understanding marketing at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And Gary's an interesting one because he pumps out a lot of content, and he gets on. He tries every platform, or a lot of them anyway.
Yeah.
And he tries them, and he pushes, and you only hear about the ones that take off, for instance. But he plays his bases and gets onto everything and tries everything out and sees how it goes. And if it takes off, then he's got a foot in the door. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter that much because he's already got the content and he's already rolling it out. So he's kind of rolling it out across the board. That's like who's recently, everyone's talking about Alex Hormozi. Yeah. And it's the perfect example of, you need to put out a lot of content for two reasons. One, because more people see it, but also you get to learn how to create content better. And you get to work out what content resonates, because I'm sure you've had it. Everyone's had it where we've created a piece of content that you think is going to go friggin' nuts, and you put it out and it just doesn't. And you're like, well, why? I spent hours on this stupid thing. Why? And it comes down to, I think Gary Vaynerchuk's mentioned this as well, is that, it's not really for the content creator to decide what is good content and what isn't. It's more the audience that will decide what they think is relevant. So even if you're putting out something in marketing, marketing type content, and the people reading it don't even realize that is a major problem that they need to fix in their own business, let's say, they're not going to pay any attention to it because they don't understand it. They don't even realize it for a while. So it's kind of a strange thing. So what we think is a fantastic piece of content that everyone should know about and fix or get onto and do something, the audience might just say, yeah, no, we're not that interested.
Yeah, 100%. If it hasn't hit that pain point that they're experiencing right now, like my business is about to shut down and what do I do? Okay, I need to build an e-commerce store today. Now that's a pain point, but 3 weeks ago, building an e-commerce store, not even interested.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, very, very, very yeah. Again, that comes back to that principle of marketing, right? Understand your target audience, know their pain points, know what their buying triggers are, know what's going to trigger them into action, because you can speak to the pain that they're actually experiencing right now. You build content around that. It's going to get them to take action.
Yeah. And I mean, organic content really is just the cheapest way of testing stuff out to run ads on. Like, you know, if you think about it, back in the day when you and I started, you know, if you put up a billboard, that cost a bit. So if you got it wrong, you're in a world of pain. Whereas these days, if you put something out, it's taken you an hour to make, for instance, and it doesn't work, it's okay.
Yeah, you can just swap it out.
Yeah, it's not going to be, you know, that, all right, this didn't work, we're not going to run any money on that. And it's an easy way of doing that. And the quickest way to learn that sort of stuff is the more you put out, the faster you learn what works, what doesn't work. Do people like to see I mean, it's not really a thing anymore, but, you know, image posts. I know the platforms aren't putting it out there anymore, but, you know, back in the day when this was a thing, before we all jumped onto short form, you could test to see which one was better. Now with short form, you test what sort of short form video works better. Is it a talking head? Is it a whiteboard? Is it, you know, skits and stuff like that? So you just test.
Yeah. So again, to come full circle and come back to saying that is a really different thing that's happened. I mean, we always had consumer data and all that kind of stuff back in the day, but like I said, you pay $5,000 for a full page ad in Inc. magazine in 2005. That $5,000 was going to sit there for a month, and if it was wrong, it was wrong for a month.
It was wrong.
And they said a billboard, you paid 10, 20 grand to have a billboard up. If it didn't resonate, wasn't going to generate you money for the 6 months that it was up there. Whereas today you can put something up, you can test it over 3 days and change it. You can run 5, 10, 20 variations of something just to see which one has the flavor that's going to work. So that capability and adaptability and speed to getting to a result is very, very different. I feel personally sometimes that because of that, the creative, that real classic Mad Men creativity can be lacking, because you really just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, more than having to have that real strong creative director vision, craft it perfectly because you know it's going to be there forever. I think there's something to be said about bringing
definitely. It definitely has taken a hit. Like the ads of these days are just, you don't look at it and go, well, that's fantastic. I mean, you come across a few.
Yeah.
But these days when you look at it, you go, oh, yeah, there's another one. And that's upsetting to a certain point. But you also see people that do this content and then they get to a point where they understand the creative and they understand the audience, and then they do roll out some decent things. And I feel, especially in the last few months, I've come across a lot more ad creative that seems to be a bit better than just throwing stuff at the wall. Like that people are putting time back into it. I think they're understanding it a bit more. And I mean, it also comes down to, we've had this massive shift with the whole iOS update where tracking got more complicated. We've got the cookie or the cookieless internet kind of rolling out, you know, and that's going to change the game again, where the tracking and the conversions just won't add up as much as what they have. Yeah. I mean, we've almost got lazy where we could throw up an ad and we can see within a couple of days whether it's converting. And we could almost say, oh, well, this ad has, you know, done 5x or 10x your ROAS. And that is, you know, that's good. You know? But these days with the tracking and how that's like the reports coming through aren't necessarily 100% correct anymore. And it's just going to get worse when cookieless comes out. And that's where understanding or creating, I think, the creative to a more, I suppose, exciting option instead of just throwing stuff out there will come into play, because we're almost moving back into kind of that where you throw some ads up for instance, a billboard, you never actually knew how much the billboard brought in. You could see that, oh yeah, sales went up X amount over the time the billboard was there, but you also had a few other ads running as well. So you could never actually say, oh, was the billboard 100%?
Yeah, you couldn't attribute it to the billboard. Yeah.
No, it was. You could say that it had a huge amount of brand awareness, which is another thing that a lot of people that we've kind of skipped out on a bit up until I suppose now, where people would just talk about the conversion and they'd forget about the actual brand awareness starting of the funnel. And I hate the word funnel, but starting of that kind of part of the funnel where people learn about a brand that they've never heard of before, and it might take them 6 months before they actually want to buy your product or your service. Not everything had to be instant because they saw an ad.
But they've seen you a few times. They've seen the billboard. They've heard you on the radio. They've seen you in the newspaper.
Yeah, and that's where I think, because of the low cost entry of digital marketing, has changed the game. So back in the day, it used to be 5 or 7 brand touch points before they used to touch it. And they used to not touch it. They used to kind of trust you and be open to purchasing. But I think these days that's probably not enough, because there's such low entry into this kind of digital marketing. You can boost a post for $4 or something like that, and it'll go out to a lot more people. So it's almost relevant to say that you probably need maybe even 20, maybe even 30 touch points before people really start to trust you a lot.
There's so much of it, right? The volume,
so much, and
the volume.
You need to put out so much that 7 posts, you're like, oh, well, that's like everyone else is doing 7. You need to kind of. So it's interesting how that's shifted a little bit.
Yeah, it's very much a volume game. I think particularly even the last couple of years, the last few years, that volume and that necessity for volume has increased.
And at what point do you think it's? What point is it? I mean, when will it not be sustainable?
Yeah, it's got to be a tipping point, right? When you've got to post 300 pieces of content a day.
Yeah, like if you don't have a team like Gary Vee, or you don't have a Alex Hormozi, what was he saying? He reckons he spends about 70 grand a month or something.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have that kind of money to produce that volume, and you probably don't need to produce that much volume, but you do need to produce more than like 1 post a day.
Yeah.
Like,
or an Andrew Tate who can hire a bunch of affiliates to go and
like at what point is it? Does it just all come crashing down because it's just not sustainable? It's a bit like Clubhouse. Like Clubhouse was the thing during COVID.
Yeah, it was.
Because no one could go anywhere. But as soon as we all had to go back to work and like go out and do things, you don't go on Clubhouse anymore because you have to physically be there. Yeah, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, similar. I mean, you look at a similar business model. It's why OnlyFans just absolutely crushed it during COVID, because no one had human interaction, right? So it was an outlet. Whereas now you're back out and you're in bars and clubs and you've got human interaction. So it still works, but that business model has tapered off from what it was. It's not as significant as it was. We're making millions of dollars in a month, sort of thing. But it's time and place, right? And there's got to be some sort of a tipping point where you physically cannot produce that much content to even. You have to produce content just to be visible now. We're not even talking about getting conversions or getting people into your off ramp just to be visible. If you're posting 1 post a day, not like a few people are going to see it, just because the way the algorithm works and because of the volume of stuff on the feed. You've got to be posting, I don't know, 3, 5, 10, 20 times a day on multiple platforms to get some semblance of people actually knowing about you. Whereas,
and it's just, it's just fascinating to see how this is going to play out, because it gets to a point where it's just not, you just can't physically do it. If you're a small business, for instance, and you've got so many things to do, and where do you find the time to create that much content? And I know they say, you should document, and you should. Documenting does make life easier. documenting what you're doing and putting that out there, and it does make life easier. But there still comes a point where you've just got so much to do, you can't even document. Like and then you have all this stuff that you've documented, and you've got to sit down and edit a video at night. And
it's got to be interesting.
Editing video, it takes a long time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Like it does. Even with the new apps and things, it still takes time.
Yeah. 100%. Again, unless you've got a team to run that, and even then, it's got to be entertaining, right, for someone to care about it, or like it, or try, or actually spend that 30 seconds or minute watching your full piece of content. Attention spans and feeds are so quick. The number of people will to actually watch a 1 minute clip, which is not a lot of time. You sort of see that. What I say, like you've got 2 or 3 seconds to actually engage, or otherwise it's moving on to the next one.
They just flick through.
So it's very, very, very interesting, very different world, but something that good adaptable marketers sort of figure out where to find. And maybe, like I said, we're shifting back to, jumping on the phone and calling clients. How's that for an idea? Actually walking down the street and going to your local butcher and saying, "Hey, how's your marketing going, guys?" So who knows? We'll revert back to maybe we'll be hand coding websites in Dreamweaver by 2025. Who knows?
Love it. Imagine that. The good old days where you didn't need all the Node.js installed, and you didn't need all liquid templating languages and all of that. You just went back to straight old HTML.
That's right, pixel by pixel, getting Internet Explorer to read it the same way as every other browser. It was just a pixel off every time. Fantastic! What a way! What a world! What a world we moved back in. We
didn't have to design for multiple screen sizes. It was just one.
You had one screen size and 2 browsers. Yeah.
And you could keyword stuff for SEO, and it just it was lovely.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good time.
Yeah, simpler days. Who knows? Maybe we'll bring some of the good stuff of that, combine it with the good stuff of today, and move forward.
Yeah, we'll see.
Awesome, man. Just in we've wrapped for almost 45 minutes. I'm sure we could keep going and reminiscing on the days of yore in the advertising and marketing industry, but I really appreciate you jumping on. Super interesting chat. Always good to speak to someone that's sort of been around and kind of compare and contrast how things were, where things are going, what they're like now. And I think it's important to sort of have that, figure out the stuff that's the same over time. I think is really, really important for us as advertisers, as marketers, as business owners. There's always stuff that always works. So understanding what those core things are and how you can just apply those to whatever the latest fandangled platform or thing is, I think it's really, really important. So appreciate you dropping by. Next time I'm out in Perth, if I am ever out in Perth, I'll be sure to swing by and go grab a coffee.
Definitely.
If people want to connect with you, find out more about you, where are some of the best places for them to do that?
TikTok is always good. Tristan Jud. Instagram is always good. You could even go Facebook, and you can even go LinkedIn. But just don't try and sell me straight away.
Slide straight in those LinkedIn DMs and
services. If you want to have a genuine chat, I'm down. Just don't try and sell me your course straight up.
wait 2 or 3 messages.
Exactly, 3 messages in, go for it.
You heard it here. Yeah, go hit Tristan up 3 emails. Right. Thanks so much for dropping by, mate. I'll drop all those links in the show notes as always, so that people can click on those and come get connected with you. Really appreciate you dropping by. It was a really, really informative chat. Hope everyone got something out of this. I certainly enjoyed it. Thanks again. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and look forward to staying connected and chatting more about the good old days further.
It was good. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone, for sticking with us on this monster episode. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, Tristan. Thanks, everyone.